guys, Horrific here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience getting car insurance on my gated manual Lamborghini Murcielago. So I came to an agreement with the previous owner of the car. We did the transaction. I sent the money. The title was released to me. I started arranging shipping from Denver, which is where I purchased the car from, out here to California. And I figured, you know, this is going to be on a truck. This is fairly valuable. I should probably get a car insurance policy to cover it before it starts making its way out to California. And I'm sure the trucking company has their own insurance policy, and that's fine. But just to be sure, I figured I'd get a car insurance policy. So first thing I did, which is probably what most of you guys would also do, and I didn't know any better, is I picked up the phone and called my regular car insurance guy, the guy that's done my car insurance for, I don't know, 15 years plus at this point, maybe longer, and insured, probably insured 8 or 9 vehicles with them at the time of this video. And so I called him and said, hey man, I have a Lamborghini Murcielago that I bought. I want to get a car insurance policy on it. And he goes, well, how much are you going to insure it for? And I said, probably 200 grand. He's like, man, we can't insure that for you. And I was like, wait, why? And he's like, we don't insure cars like that. You guys need to call somebody else. And so I said, all right. And so I looked around and did some research, and from what I could tell, the gold standard for high-end car insurance, as well as for classic cars, as well as for supercars, is Hagerty. And Hagerty's they're the gold standard, and they're really well known. And so I called up Hagerty and I said, hey man, I'm looking at getting a car insurance policy. And he said, well, what are you trying to insure? And I said, I'm trying to insure a Lamborghini Murcielago. And he said, what value are you trying to insure for? And so I threw out $200,000. And he said, yeah, I think that's totally fair. If it's a manual transmission, that's in line with what we were expecting. If it's an e-gear, it'd probably be, the value be a little bit less. And he said, sure, we can get you a quote. Send me your email address and all that stuff, and we'll send you a packet. So they send me this a regular application form to fill out for Hagerty that just says, you know, your name and address and all that stuff. And then they send me this letter that says, thanks for riding with Hagerty. There's nothing we love more than helping you get behind the wheel. Please complete and return a resume of high-performance driving experience. And in all of my years of getting car insurance, I have never had to fill out a resume of high-performance driving experience. So this was new for me. The top of the form, they just have, you know, your personal information and then the number of years driving high-performance vehicles. The second category here is year, make, and model, as well as engine size and horsepower, and they expect you to list all of the vehicles that you've owned in your driving experience, the number of years you've driven them, the dates operated, as well as the annual miles driven. Fortunately for me, I don't think I've driven a car with less than 450 horsepower in over 10 years at this point. So I've had my fair share of fun toys. But yeah, so I listed all those down. And then below that says, you know, please list out all the vehicles that you have had experience operating. So other vehicles that, you know, either family has owned, friends have owned, etc. If I've spent a fair amount of time driving those vehicles, and I think I only listed cars that we've owned as a family. The categories, the two categories below that are even more interesting. It's list all hobby-related clubs and events participated in. And so these are all, you know, are you part of any clubs and car clubs in your area? So, you know, PCA or the Ferrari Club of America, or you know, any other car groups that you've been a part of. The category right below that is they expect you to list all your licenses, driving courses, driving education classes, etc. And I'm willing to bet they don't mean list how many times I've been to traffic school, because I couldn't even tell you that number. It's been a lot. And so, you know, this is where you list your racing licenses. This is where you list what performance driving schools you've been to, whether you've been to Bondurant or Skip Barber, or, you know, Dirtfish up in Washington to go to rally school. This is where you put all that stuff down. And so they ask you to fill out a full-blown resume of all the cars that you've been familiar with operating and owned before they grant you car insurance. And so I filled out the resume. They didn't have any questions beyond that. It was just cool, great. You've had a bunch of cars, and they wrote me a quote for a policy, and I noticed the policy pricing wise, it was I would say it's more expensive than my daily driver vehicles, but not astronomically more. It was about 50% more expensive than my other policy on my vehicle, so my daily driver. So the price wasn't astronomical. It wasn't like to insure something that much more valuable. It's probably over 3x the value of my daily driver, maybe even closer to 4 at this point because I've had some depreciation on that. And they send me this policy, and I look and it says, oh, you're allowed 2,000 miles a year. I said, well, what happens if I want to drive more than 2,000 miles a year? And Hagerty basically said, well, if you need that, you need to go find another insurance company because our policies only go up to 2,000 miles a year. So something to be aware of as you're going through the process, getting car insurance. One other angle I looked at is I had set up an LLC in Montana sometime last year, just as another option in case I wanted to register the vehicle out there. I was planning on potentially using it for some YouTube revenue, etc. And I figured I'd, have the LLC based out of Montana, use it as a corporate car, and transport it back and forth as needed. I called my insurance guy back then, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm looking at these cars. Can you run me a quote for the insurance on it? And it's going to be registered out of my LLC in Montana, and I just want to know what insurance is going to run." And he goes, "Where's the car going to be?" I said, "Well, it'll be back and forth between Montana and here. And, but when I'm using it here in the state, it'll be parked at my house. But it'll be registered to my LLC in Montana." And he goes, "I can't insure a vehicle that is not a personal vehicle. Now it's a commercial vehicle that is registered in Montana that may or may not be domiciled here in California for use." He's like, "You're going to have to go call commercial car insurance companies." And so I then began the process of calling commercial car insurance companies. And what I learned was if you want to insure a vehicle registered in Montana to an LLC out there, you need to talk to the insurance agent that's based in Montana. So I called them. I talked to Progressive Commercial Car Insurance, and their policies were very different. They had a policy of, well, if you're going to use the vehicle, there's no mileage limitation, but there's a area restriction. So you can't leave 500, you can't go beyond 500 miles of where the car is going to be domiciled, which is totally an option. I mean, I don't plan on driving great distances with this regularly, but I thought, wait, if I go on a rally or a long road trip with it, I may need to go beyond that. And so they said, "Oh, well, call us. We may be able to extend it for 1 or 2 weeks at a time." But in this particular case, I decided to register the car to me here in California and not go through the LLC route. But yeah, that's been my experience getting car insurance. Contrary to my belief when I started this process, you can't just insure it in every insurance company. Like, you can't call Geico and spend 15 minutes and save 15% on car insurance. They will tell you to go pound sand. But hope you guys are doing well. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.